Welcome everyone to another Few Minutes Friday. It's me, Jeremy Jacobs. Hope you're all well. I'm coming to you in the middle of the screen today because normally I do this cool off center. Look at me. Oh, look at you. You're so cool. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. But we're going in the middle today purely for Instagram reasons, because I realised that if I put myself on Instagram, I might be a bit cut off. You might get like that half my face. Anyway. Here I am. Want to hear something funny? I recorded this video a few hours ago, and then I put it on my computer, and it went the whole way through, and I was like, damn it! I've screwed up the audio. And you're asking what's so funny about that? Nothing, because it's not funny at all. I didn't find that amusing, but I did laugh at myself, because if I hadn't have laughed, I would have cried. Anyway. What am I here to talk to you about this week? Overwhelm. Overwhelm. That's my dramatic interpretation of overwhelm. And I have been feeling very overwhelmed this week. There's lots been going on. And I've also noticed that I am in what I like to call survival mode. I'm talking like a robot now. Survival mode. Survival mode for me is when things are not going to plan, and yeah, what can I say about that? Yeah, survival mode. I go into survival mode when I'm worried about money, or I'm worried about income, or I haven't got enough, scarcity, lack of, the opposite of abundance, which we can get caught into a trap sometimes. I might talk about that next week. I'm not going to dig into too much about that. But when I'm in survival mode, I turn into this horrible monster that runs around going, rah. And I've been in survival mode this week. So lucky you if you've been hanging around with me. But I've been able to spot it and go, stop it. Stop being an arsehole. Anyway. So yeah, so overwhelm. I found out today, believe it or not, with no shame, I admit, I didn't realise that whelm was a word. There we go. So overwhelm, underwhelm, whelm. And the actual dictionary definition of whelm means to engulf or to bury. So we can think of being... so when we describe being whelmed, well, I've never heard anyone say whelmed before. Oh, I'm so whelmed at the moment. They often say overwhelmed, or they always have in my experience. Anyway, breathe. Okay, so overwhelmed, whelmed meaning to engulf or to bury. So I think the word whelmed in itself is pretty dramatic in itself, but we love to add an over, and you might even stick a super or a very or a very super very overwhelmed. I'm super overwhelmed. I'm very overwhelmed. I'm super very overwhelmed. No, it doesn't really work. Anyway, you get the point. We like to dramatize our lives sometimes, don't we? Anyway, so why am I talking to you about overwhelmed? Because I've been looking at that this week and then thinking about the tips and techniques that I use to counteract overwhelm. So for me, often, doing it now, one of the most important things for me is to use my breath or my breathing to get present and bring myself back into the moment, because often for me, overwhelm comes from brain generated patterns and noise, your little internal dialogue, that little voice that when you stop talking goes, why has he stopped talking? He's a bit weird. This is boring. This is amazing. Whatever it says when you're silent. We all have it. And mine goes, we've got so much to do. I've got my university degree to finish, and I've got my business, and there's COVID, and it's getting dark, and I've put on a bit of weight, and I've got to try and be nice to everyone and not upset someone and not offend everyone and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, and if that's a lot going on there, then that is, or can leave you feeling overwhelmed. And I like to think of our brains and our bodies as, or rather an easier way to look at it, if you think of your computer your laptop. If you don't need to know the technicalities of how laptops and computers work, but if you open too many programs and you run too many things on it, sometimes it'll go and crash. And like mine did the other day, right in the middle of me doing something fun. Anyway, so think of it like that. Our brains are no different in some respects, but they have a huge capacity to deal with this kind of stuff, way more than a Windows machine does. Sorry, Bill Gates, but that's true. So for me, the first thing is presence, breath, breathe. And this is a technique that I get challenged with quite a bit. And when I say challenged, I mean putting it into my daily practice and just, breathe. Sometimes I put Post-it notes up saying breathe. Not like breathe as in just breathe, as in like... It's super important for slowing your heart rate down, bringing you back to the moment. And recommendation is in for 2 and then out for, in for, let's say in for 2, out for 4. So, or in for 3, out for 6. So double the out breath as the in breath, if that makes sense. Yeah, so. Do that about 4 or 5 times and you'll start to chill. Now, if you're like me, that is the hardest thing to do when you're really stressed. The last thing I want to do is stop, because my brain is trying to do more, to get it done, to take the overwhelm away. In my experience, that is what the instinctual thing to do is to do that. But in my experience, it's the worst thing you can do. Hear me out. So first step is to breathe, yeah? Just to take a few breaths and center yourself and bring yourself back to the moment. Just slow everything down, okay? And then the second thing that I like to do is to offload. Outreach or offload. So that is to either pick up the phone and speak to someone. Now, in my experience, that is, especially if you're someone who's quite entrepreneurial and you like to do stuff by yourself, that's actually quite a challenging thing to do for me. You may experience that yourself. It takes some vulnerability. It takes something sometimes to step out your comfort zone and say, hey, I'm struggling a bit, can I talk? My other piece of advice is do that with someone that is not involved in the situation, particularly if it's something that's quite controversial, dramatic, sensitive in nature. Certainly, sometimes it's best to go and speak to someone else that's not involved, just to have as a sounding board, someone you trust who can listen. I often say at the beginning of the conversation, I just need to rant right now. I don't need you to do anything. I just need to be heard. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes you might want advice. But in my experience, it's best to be clear with the person you're talking to about whether or not you want advice. Because sometimes when you are very stressed out and someone gives you advice, it can hit a nerve. So be clear. That's what I'm trying to say. The other option, if you're not used to doing that or you're not comfortable with doing that, which is totally cool, it's your life, you decide, is to write stuff down. And what I mean by this is to write unedited and just get it all out on paper. Just get some scrap paper and just write whatever's there. Don't censor it. You don't have to share it with anyone else, but in my experience, that really, really helps. It's super useful. Now, once you've done that, the next step for me is to plan. So once you've you've sort of centered yourself, you've got yourself into a zone, you've had a chat with someone, or you've written it down in paper, and you've kind of got all the kind of like negative, nasty energy out of you, which is there and it's totally acceptable to have and to express. You know, anger has its place in certain situations. Of course, it's not great in other situations, particularly if you're dealing with vulnerable people. But anger is actually a very useful emotion in my book, used correctly and used in the right way. I find often people try and suppress anger. So the next step is to plan. So I've come up with the acronym POP. Presence, offload, plan. I love that. I'm so proud of myself. And then the last one is plan. Now this, so this is might take you a bit more writing. So I have about 3 or 4 places where I use to note down what I need to do. I use my inbox on my email. That's one thing. I only have emails I have to deal with. Everything else gets files deleted. You might just have a scrap piece of paper next to your desk. You just write down what you're doing for the day. And then I have a system, an online piece of software called Todoist, which allows me to organize all of my tasks and schedule them in, and I know that they're all there somewhere, right? It does take a bit of organization, but it's really, really important in my book to be able to get it down on paper, because then you know it's there and you can kind of let your brain off from thinking about it if you've got that system set up. I'm not here to talk to you about scheduling or time management. That's not my expertise necessarily, but that's one of the things that I do. And then I've got a piece of paper with it all written down. Looking down there, kind of like that. So once you've got it all written down, prioritize. What is the most important thing that you need to do today? So, for example, this week and last week we've got a new tender for a big customer at the bakery. So that is top priority. Everything else, unless it's something that has to be dealt with, like pay a bill or deal with someone who's in crisis or something like that, those things that come up need to be dealt with. But there's a long list of things on my task list that I'm like, right, push it back to next week, and allow yourself the time to focus in on that one thing that you're going to do, or maybe 1 or 2 things in a day. And don't push yourself too hard, particularly at this moment in time where there's a lot going on in the world. You know, we need to just be easy with ourselves. The other thing is delegate. If there's anything on that list that you can pass off to someone else, then do it. Sometimes that's a bit harder than easier said than done, rather. I struggle with that one. And then the other one is dump. Get rid of it. Don't, if it's not important, you've got a lot going on, then get rid of it. If it's to speak to someone and say, look, I really can't deal with this right now. I've had to put some meetings off like 3 times over the past few months, because every time it's come up, I'm like, I just can't deal with this. I've written a very nice email saying, I'm really sorry, push it back. You know, if you do it right, then people will understand. And then the final thing is, and this is super important, is scheduling time for you, okay? Unless you're in your early 20s or you're a real high functioner, you've got lots of energy, I would assert that we're not capable of running 7 days a week on all the time. You see this sometimes with entrepreneurs. They're like, oh, I do 7-day week. And it's like, great, good for you. That's not for me at all. I've tried that and I noticed that I get tired, I get burnt out. I'm no good to anyone. So my advice is to make sure you take time, give yourself permission to take time for yourself, a minimum 1 day off fully a week rather, weekend, or whatever works for you. You can figure that out, but I just wanted to remind you to take the time out for you. Do nice things for yourself and look after yourself, however that is. My things are bubble baths, going for a run, eating nice food, having conversations with friends, going out with friends, cooking, all those sorts of things. Those are my things that I do for me. Self-care, self-love. I think I talked about that in another video. Anyway, I've rambled on for a whole almost 14 minutes, and it's good time because someone's just pulled up outside my house in a car. So I'm gonna make some noise. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I wish you safety, peace, love, happiness, all yummy, lovely things. And I will see you very soon. Mwah, mwah, mwah.